Johann Kahler was a corporal in a German motorcycle brigade in 1939. Today he lives with his wife in Malibu, California, and manufactures glassware.
Im Jahre 1939 war ich noch ein junger Mann. In 1939 I was a young man. And of course, when you're young, you look for excitement and adventure. For me, it came in the war. It was a supreme moment in my life, but it was not what I wanted.
In 1939, Felix Greenspan was a sergeant in a Polish artillery unit near the German frontier. Today, he lives with his wife and family in Buffalo, New York.
My nie byliśmy przygotowani do walki. We were unprepared to fight back when the Germans invaded Poland. We had only our cavalry and our weapons of First World War. But we did not lack courage. We were ready to die in order that Poland might remain free.
In the last days before the fall of Poland, the lives of Johann Kahler and Felix Greenspan came together for a brief moment. Two fighting men, one German, one Polish, now relive that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. The word blitzkrieg means lightning war. It is used by the Germans to describe a new type of attack. No longer will one army face another across long trenches. Poland will be the first victim. On August 31st, 1939, Nazi soldiers wearing Polish uniforms take a German radio station at Gleiwitz. Hitler now has manufactured an excuse for attack. At dawn on September 1st, a blitzkrieg is unleashed and a world war begins. Poland, 1939. It is the last of a beautiful summer, one of the most beautiful in memory. In ironic contrast to the peacefulness of the countryside is the atmosphere of mounting tension in Warsaw, Poland's largest city and its capital. The Polish government is aware that their nation, overrun and partitioned 5 times in the past 250 years, is Adolf Hitler's target. But Poland is not easily intimidated. While her army numbers only 350,000 men, chiefly infantry, there are another 1.5 million men in reserves awaiting mobilization. The Polish soldier is justifiably renowned for his courage and fighting spirit. One of these men, stationed with an artillery unit near the border, is Sergeant Felix Greenspan.
Everybody has a feeling that war is coming and that it will be with Germany. Of course, being soldiers, we are a little excited about fighting.
The Polish cavalry is part of a proud and glorious tradition, an ancient tradition. The men are equipped only with rifles, sabers, and lances, weapons of another age. Poland has only a few tanks, very little artillery, and a small air force. Many of the planes are obsolete and suitable only for training purposes. In Germany, there is a highly trained and magnificently equipped army. The Germans have 20 times more tanks than the Poles, along with a wide variety of modern armored vehicles. Germany has a standing army of 75 divisions, a total of more than 1 million men. One of these men, a motorcyclist stationed near the Polish frontier, is Corporal Johann Kahler.
Everything moves like clockwork. The attack is so orderly, it is hard for me to believe this is war.
At first, we didn't see much of the Luftwaffe, but now they are everywhere. The Stukas scream as they dive down on us.
Within the first few hours, the Luftwaffe has effectively annihilated the Polish Air Force. The German ground forces can now move ahead without danger from the skies. The German attack forces are divided into two large groups. The Army Group North is to split the Polish corridor. Army Group South will swing toward Warsaw. Warsaw lies in the center of this complex pincer movement. After Poland, Sergeant Kahler will take part in the invasion of France. He will also fight at Stalingrad. He spends the last years of the war in Italy, where he surrenders to the Americans in 1945. After the fall of Modlin, Corporal Felix Greenspan becomes a prisoner of war. Later, he will be shipped to Auschwitz concentration camp, and he will remain there until liberated by the Allied armies. For the Germans, the price of triumph in Poland is light. A few thousand killed, a few thousand wounded. For the Poles, the cost is staggering. The agony of Poland begins. In 1940, Donald Kingaby was a sergeant in the Royal Air Force Volunteer Reserve and a fighter pilot in a Spitfire. Today, he writes technical manuals. He lives with his wife and 3 children in London.
After the fall of France, I thought we were in for trouble, big trouble. But Winston Churchill's spirit had its effect on all of us. We knew that we were going to carry on, that we would fight hard, and that somehow we would win.
In 1940, Harry Siegert was a sergeant in the German Luftwaffe and a recent graduate of a bomber school. A former resident of Berlin, Germany, he works today in Los Angeles as a supervisor of computer systems.
My boyhood dream was to fly. It was for me the most beautiful and gratifying experience. Too bad it had to be through war. By the time the war ended, my wounds made flying for me impossible forever. Now I get a feeling of speed and excitement from my boat.
In the skies over war-torn Britain, the lives of Sergeants Kingaby and Siegert will cross. 2 fighting men, 1 British, 1 German, relive that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. In the summer of 1940, Adolf Hitler has Europe under his heel. He turns to Great Britain. The English stand alone. The German government makes it clear that surrender terms will not be harsh. But Churchill replies that the British will fight on the beaches, in the villages, and in the fields. Hitler orders his chiefs of staff to complete work on Operation Sea Lion, a detailed plan for the invasion of England. The Battle of Britain has begun. One of the German airmen who will carry out Goering's orders is Sergeant Harry Siegert, stationed with a bomber squadron near Reims, France.
I would truly like to find a fighting man who isn't afraid of dying. We may feel that we can win the war, but we also know that there can be no victory.
One airman of the handful his country depends upon is Sergeant Donald Kingaby. He is based with the 266th Squadron at Wittering, Tangmere, and Hornchurch. No obstacles are allowed to stand in the way of aircraft production, yet the RAF's operational strength, down to 331 planes after Dunkirk, is now only 620. The RAF's operational strength is increased by a chain of radar stations around the coast. But in other ways as well, Britain is preparing for the inevitable conflict.
A bit of fighting.
We wonder what the barrage balloons are good for. It is easy to get around them, but if the weather is bad, there is always the chance of running into the cables. Say that I feel sorry. I'm too busy flying my machine. All I think about is reaching the target. I am not over here to kill. I'm over here to do the best I can for Germany.
By the end of July, Britain still dominates the skies, although they have been forced to cancel all sailings through the channel during daylight.
I think the German pilots as a whole are most confident and experienced. People say that I have a feeling that the bomber crews are more regimented and depend entirely on their leader. When he's knocked out, there seems to be a lack of cohesion among craft often weave into airy, intriguing patterns. If we can, we fly just below the height at which they form so that we won't betray our position to the enemy.
Our only defense against the enemy fighter plane are our 3 machine guns. They aim for the cockpit and wings, hoping to set the plane on fire.
In a dogfight, it's the devil of a job to control your own excitement and apprehension so that you think and fly correctly. You don't think much about the chap in the other plane. You weave, twist and turn to guard your own tail and wonder how long you dare fly straight and steady enough to shoot your target down. You can lose a lot of weight in a dogfight in a very short time.
By August, Goering estimates that he needs only 4 days to put the English fighter planes out of action. He begins the preparation of Adlertag, or the Eagle attack, an operation intended as the knockout blow to the RAF. It is decided that the attack will commence on August 13th. For the first time in history, a great campaign is going to be fought and decided in the air.
We generally start our morning flights about 4 a.m. By the time we have breakfast, the planes have been serviced. We wonder if today we will have fighter escort and how long they will stay with us. Over England, we always have to fight low clouds. We do a lot of instrument flying.
In spite of the bad weather and unexpected opposition, they managed to hit airdromes, dockyards, and aircraft factories. But in the process, they lose 45 of their aircraft against a British loss of only 13. 2 days later, on August 15th, Goering again puts his squadrons in the air. He hopes that the heavy fighting of the 13th has so severely depleted the RAF that gaps will be left in the... On this day, the Luftwaffe has made its biggest effort, nearly 1,800 sorties. They had expected an all-out victory. Instead, Adlertag is at failure. After a brief lull due to bad weather, the Luftwaffe again attacks with renewed vigor. For the British, the situation is becoming daily more serious. They are still shooting down more enemy planes than they themselves lose, but the margin is not a big one. They have now come to a point where the loss of a single plane, the death or wounding of one pilot, represents an important setback. In London and throughout all of England, the outcome of each day's battle is awaited with intense concern. The Germans continue to hammer away at the sector stations, the nerve centers of the RAF command. The repair and maintenance squadrons do their best with the overused aircraft, but it is the loss in pilots that is irreparable. Fighter command strength had stood at 1,400 pilots at the end of July. 3 weeks later, it has fallen to 1,000. Slowly, the pilot forces are being bled to death. Slowly, the communication systems and airfields are being battered to bits. Slowly, the pilot reserves are reaching dangerous lows. Now the question is, how much longer can fighter command hold out? How much longer before the Luftwaffe deals its final crushing blow? At this moment, when things are at their darkest, an incident occurs that causes a dramatic change in the German plans. At the moment when the fortunes of war seem to be tilting slowly but inexorably in favor of the Germans, something happens which sets off a train of events that alters the whole course of the war. On August 24th, 200 German bombers are sent to attack targets in widely separated parts of England and Wales. The pilots do not have orders to bomb London, but, in fact, bombs are dropped on the city.
Accidental bombing? Of course, anything is possible. But I do not think that any pilot in the German Air Force would do such a thing. Considering our military discipline, I can't believe it.
Whether this bombing is due to faulty navigation, inexperience, or irresponsibility is not known. But the fact remains, London has been bombed. British bombers are immediately ordered on a retaliatory raid to bomb Berlin the following night. The effect of this raid on Hitler is out of all proportion to the damage done. He has boasted that bombs would never be dropped on Berlin. In a speech on September 4th, he swears devastating reprisals. If they attack our cities, we will rub their cities from the map. Thus, the Luftwaffe is obliged to switch the offensive from the RAF to the City of London. Hitler believes that a prolonged bombing of London will cause panic and mass hysteria among the population. But the result is that attacks are lifted from the airfields and sector stations at a crucial moment. In this breathing space, the RAF is able to repair the damage done on their facilities and equipment, and to take the pressure off their fighter pilots. One more week of attacks might have led to disaster. Now there is time for the RAF to reconsolidate its forces. Late in the afternoon of Saturday, September 7th, this new phase of German strategy is launched. From a forward air base, Goering himself watches the flights take off toward the English coast. It is a time chosen to catch the English workers on their way home. 300 tons of high explosives and many thousands of incendiaries are dropped on London within an hour and a half. Started in this raid cannot be put out before more bombers arrive later that night with another load. Between 5 o'clock on this Saturday evening, Goering is prompted to announce on the German radio, "This is an historic hour. Our Air Force has delivered its thrust right into the enemy's heart." It is true, London's heart has been damaged, but it has not stopped beating. It is felt that because of the size of this raid, the German invasion is imminent. Still, the first requirement for a successful invasion has not been met. Fighter command has not been defeated. Hitler decides to await the outcome of the next few days. The outcome is that fewer than half the German bombers succeed in dropping their bombs. Hitler, still hoping that the British will crumble under the repeated air attacks on their capital, again postpones his decision to invade. He has been assured that air supremacy is almost within his grasp. A victory must be forced with no more delay. Goering picks Sunday, September 15th as the day of reckoning. The morning of September 15th turns out to be ideal flying weather. At about 10:30 a.m., the radar warning system picks up enemy planes gathering over the French coast. To the waiting English pilots, the German armadas appear to stretch from horizon to horizon. After the first attack by the British planes, the mighty formations begin to lose cohesion.
Every single aircraft is engaged, and there is nothing left on the ground in the way of reserves. But the Luftwaffe is taking a beating. They aren't getting away scot-free.
Shoot back with everything we have.
This great battle, which was to have crushed fighter command, proves instead a shattering blow to the German airmen. The Luftwaffe has been routed. Again, the gamble is lost. On September 17th, Hitler postpones Operation Sea Lion until further notice.
I had a plane loaded with paratroops, all crack troops, veterans of Rotterdam. The invasion being cancelled is a big disappointment to all of us.
British cannot know the extent of their victory, for a new phase of the battle has begun. The German Luftwaffe has set out with vengeance to destroy London. Night after night until well in November, London is bombed unmercifully. After 57 days of consecutive bombardment, London proves she can take it. By November, the night raids are expanded to include the industrial cities of Britain. Coventry is viciously attacked on November 14th, as are Bristol, Southampton, and Liverpool.
We are hit. I call to the rest of the crew for damage reports. No one answers. The machine will not react. It's hard to fly.
Sergeant Harry Siegert, after being hit over Coventry, is shot down by a Spitfire over the Channel. He will spend many weeks in a German hospital. Later, he fights at Stalingrad and the Battle of the Bulge, and is captured by the Russians in 1945. Sergeant Donald Kingaby pilots numerous missions for the Royal Air Force, and is credited with 23 enemy aircraft brought down. During the Battle of Britain, the Luftwaffe lost over 2,300 aircraft. The British lost 600 fighters. The citizens of Britain paid an even greater price. So concludes history's last great air duels. Jackson Farris was at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. He was a warrant officer in the U.S. Navy and a gunner. Today, a pipeline worker, he lives with his family in Southern California.
I never thought the Japanese would attack us so far away from their home port. We were just a victim of circumstances. History was against us.
In 1941, Juzo Mori was a petty officer in the Imperial Japanese Navy and the pilot of a Nakajima torpedo bomber. Today, he operates his own small bar in Tokyo.
The attack at Pearl Harbor is mine. It belongs to me. It is my heritage, and no one can take it from me.
At Pearl Harbor, the lives of Juzo Mori and Jackson Farris came together for a brief moment. Two fighting men, one American, one Japanese, relived that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. In June 1941, the Japanese government has been working at the conquest of Asia for 7 years. They need oil badly, but oil is to be found to the south. The Japanese do not have the strength to fight two suspicious neighbors, Russia and the United States. On June 22nd, Germany attacks the Soviet Union, and that leaves but one enemy for Japan to face, America. Japan is faced with a problem. To move ahead will be to risk war with the United States. But suppose, just suppose, that the American fleet could be destroyed at anchor. In September 1941, at Kagoshima Bay in southern Kyushu, Japanese carrier pilots begin training for a very special mission. One of the pilots in training is Juzo Mori.
I have been on board the carrier planes. My torpedo squadron number 11 is Imperial Navy's best. Admiral Yamamoto said so months ago and sent us an official citation for our work.
Although opposed to war with the United States, Japanese naval boss Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto is ordered to prepare for it. The Japanese battle plan includes Thailand, the Malay Peninsula, the Philippines, Singapore, and oil-rich Java. But before any of it, the U.S. fleet must be crushed at Pearl Harbor. For over a year, the attack is planned. When the U.S. Pacific Fleet steamed out of San Diego in May 1940 for maneuvers in Hawaiian waters, it was to have been a round trip, but as tension mounts in the Pacific, Washington orders the fleet to remain a restraining influence on Japanese ambitions. Aboard the battleship USS California is 28-year-old Warrant Officer Jackson Farris. Formerly on the Mississippi, he's a gunner and a spare-time athlete.
I've been aboard the California about a year, caught her in Bremerton. It's a Navy practice to transfer a man when he's promoted to warrant. We call the ship the Prune Barge. I like her. She's Vice Admiral Pye's flagship of the battle force, and we're proud of her. She's a good ship, really a good ship. Good at athletics, gunnery, and engineering. The California takes a back seat to no one.
Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, in September 1941, has been the home port for the bulk of American sea power for almost a year and a half. To protect the fleet, the U.S. Army maintains 2 ground divisions, a force believed powerful enough to block any landing attempt. Keenly aware of shortages, the American military moved personnel and weapons into the base. The Air Corps, operating principally out of Hickam and Wheeler Fields, moves planes in to strengthen the island defenses. Although still in short supply, planes of the Army's Dawn Patrol take a turn at flying reconnaissance. The United States has a war plan, codename Rainbow 5. It is a plan for reaction to a Japanese-initiated war. If the Philippines are reached, is a decisive naval engagement anticipated.
I'm the warrant gunner for the ship. That means if one of the guns doesn't work, I have to fix it right now. We have a lot of drills, a lot of maneuvers. We talk about the possibility of war a lot. Most of the men are pretty sure it's coming.
During the first 2 weeks in November, even while the diplomats talk peace in Washington, the Pearl Harbor strike force begins to gather at a top-secret rendezvous point in the Kuriel Islands, Tan Bay. By November 22nd, the 32 ships, including 6 high-speed carriers, have reached a rendezvous point off the desolate island of Etarofu. American listening posts, accustomed to deciphering the chatter between Japanese warships, report that a large segment of the Imperial fleet is silent. In advance of the force are 27 large submarines. Their job, to reconnoiter and report back advance intelligence, and, during the attack, to sink any ships attempting to escape. Off Pearl Harbor, 5 of these submarines will launch miniature 2-man subs designed to slip through harbor defenses on suicidal torpedo missions.
Aboard the flagship Akagi, we are told we are now a task force, and our objective is Pearl Harbor. Now I see how much like Kagoshima Bay Pearl Harbor is.
On November 26th, the same day Secretary of State Hull presents the final U.S. note to the Japanese demanding that they get out of China, the strike force leaves Tan Bay, outward bound for Pearl Harbor.
There will be no more cycling. The weather is very bad. The seas are high and rough. Soldier pitches so much that I feel sorry for the men on the destroyers. Some men are swept overboard when our ship refueled from the tankers.
We were just supposed to be out here on a temporary basis, but it's dragged on and on. We maneuvered down to Johnson Island and out towards Midway and around, making a regular circle. It just goes on and on. Some of the admirals have gone to Washington to ask how long we'll be here, but they get the same answer: to wait.
December 2nd, the Hawaii-bound strike force receives an important message from Admiral Yamamoto. He signals, "Climb Mount Niitaka," the code for proceed with attack. The ships move to Condition 2, the second degree of readiness for action.
After the attack at Pearl Harbor, we must make it back to our ship one by one, alone. I am confident of my ability to navigate over the ocean.
For a whole week, we've been out maneuvering and on firing practice. Last night, an unidentified sub was reported, but nothing else happened. Now it's Friday. Most of the men are looking for too many men for liberty, so most of the men just get daytime liberty. The weather here is what California advertises, but the men are still homesick. The married men are pretty lonesome for their families back on the mainland. And for us single guys, there's not too much to do.
The strike force is under orders to sink on sight any American, British, or Dutch ship and to board any neutral to prevent radio transmission. Heavy weather and a devious course pay off. The fleet escapes detection. Early the morning of December 7th, the Pearl Harbor strike force reaches its launch point, 275 miles north of Pearl Harbor.
I say a prayer and hope that my mother and four brothers will be proud of me this day. A special message comes to us from Admiral Yamamoto. The rise or fall of our empire depends on the outcome of this battle. Each man will complete his duties until his flesh is crushed and his bones become powder. Everywhere men are...
By 6 a.m., the first wave is off the deck. Pearl Harbor is 2 hours away.
Of attack has been reviewed many times. If we achieve surprise, the torpedo bombers will go in first. I become afraid. Do the Americans know we are coming? Are they waiting for us and preparing to shoot us all down?
swoop in to strafe and bomb the neatly parked planes at Hickam and Wheeler Fields, at the Navy's Kaneohe Field and the Marines' Eva Field.
I see Pearl Harbor. It is spread out like a picture. I see explosions against the battleships, but one battleship is receiving no attention. I will get that one. It won't be easy. No guns are firing in my direction. I feel the plane lighten as torpedo falls away.
All the battleships in the harbor, except the California exposed and alone, are tied up in pairs.
I'm knocked unconscious, and when I come to, I hear the announcement of a torpedo hit at port side frame 50. I know it's the Japanese. I don't know how I know, but I just do. Like a sitting duck. We can't maneuver. They're coming in from all directions. I don't see how we missed some of them. They seem to have a charmed life. The chief calls down, send up more ammunition. Start the 5-inch ammo up by hand. I want to move faster. My mind is clear. I act more like a mechanical man because I've been trained for these emergencies. I hear cheering up above because we're fighting back now. We were struck by surprise and now we're making an account for ourselves. I think that some of the older men like me have inspired the younger men.
We are successful. Our attack is a complete success. I'm very happy. I have just hit the great battleship with my torpedo. She must have a huge hole in her side now and is probably thinking. My landing gear is damaged. I am told to make a water landing.
I'm being carried from the ship. I don't want to be moved. I think my back is broken and I see some in worse fix than me. I don't want to go to the hospital. This is still a safer place than the hospital right now.
By 10 a.m., it's all over. 18 ships, including all 8 battleships, are sunk or badly damaged. West Virginia, hit by 6 torpedoes, sinks in the mud. And shielded by the Oklahoma, survives with damage. Tennessee, bombed and showered by flaming debris from Arizona, will burn all day and all through the night. Nearly 200 planes destroyed, 159 others damaged. A total of 64 lives lost. Of the 40 explosions which hit the city of Honolulu, only 1 is caused by the Japanese. All the rest are the result of confused and misdirected anti-aircraft fire. In a moment, the conclusion of our story. Petty Officer Juzo Mori will later fly missions at Wake Island and Midway. Shot down at Guadalcanal, he loses his right hand, ends the war as a flying instructor. Warrant Officer Jackson Farris, reported missing in action at Pearl Harbor, will later fight at Saipan and Lingayen Gulf, and through to the surrender at Tokyo Bay. For his bravery at Pearl Harbor, he becomes the first man recommended for the Congressional Medal of Honor in World War II. The greatest disaster in American naval history is over. The flames of Pearl Harbor destroyed a fleet, but as Edward Gray said when he likened America to a gigantic boiler, once the fire is lighted under it, there is no limit to the power it can generate. The fire had been lit. In 1942, Gilbert Usher Renwick was a sergeant in the Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders and participated in the raid on Dieppe. Today, he is a police officer in Vancouver and a piper in the police band.
Dieppe isn't something one wants to talk about too much, but no one can say that the fighting men who landed there weren't glorious. They were the very cream of Canada.
In 1942, Heinz Cassino was a corporal in the German 302nd Infantry Division, stationed outside of Dieppe. A Berliner before the war, he lives today in Passaic, New Jersey, where he works as a tool maker.
The Dieppe invasion was doomed to failure. When it happened, it was over quickly. I shall never forget the sight of those wounded Tommies screaming with pain on the beaches, and nobody able to help them.
On the beaches of Dieppe, the lives of Sergeant Renwick and Corporal Cassina came together for a brief moment. Two fighting men, one Canadian, one German, relive that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. There is a time, even in war, when friends fall out. This occurs among the Allies in the summer of 1942. The Russians are reeling under waves of German attack. They want a second front in Europe now. This would mean a full-scale invasion, impossible at this time. To lessen the pressure on the Russians and to test invasion problems, the Canadian, British, and American forces staged the biggest cross-channel raid of the war. The objective? A small coastal town in occupied France, Dieppe. The Germans are keenly aware that the Allies are under pressure from Russia to establish a second front. From Denmark to the south of France, the Wehrmacht has fortified the coastline to repel any invader. Wehrmacht General Conrad Haas commands the 302nd Infantry Division in the Dieppe sector. He has designed an elaborate defense, supplemented by the natural obstacles of high cliffs and inhospitable beaches. Assigned to duty with the 302nd Infantry Division along the northwestern coast of France is ex-Luftwaffe veteran Corporal Heinz Cassina.
I have recently attended a course in demolition and anti-tank warfare. Our instructors show us how to destroy enemy panzers with Teleminen and Hohlhaftlager. The first is a flat mine that you put on the ground. The second is a magnet with explosive that you can slap right on top of the panzer. There is talk of invasion, that British landings can be expected. But it is doubtful that anything will take place here at Dieppe. Here the war seems very far away. The farmers are tilling their fields. There is a feeling of quiet and peace about the countryside.
thousands of Dominion troops gathered in England awaiting action is a 26-year-old platoon leader of the 2nd Canadian Division, Sergeant Gilbert Usher Renwick.
We have come from all over Canada: Ontario, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Manitoba, British Columbia. We're just part of the troops tramping around England at this time. We're over here to do whatever is needed.
April 1942, the Allies begin planning an exploratory raid on France. The port of Dieppe is selected as the target. The operation is officially described as a reconnaissance in force, an experiment of men and equipment. The purpose, to test German defensive measures and new Allied assault weapons. The plan, given the code name Operation Router, is under the direction of Lord Louis Mountbatten. May 1942. The waiting is over. The Canadian 2nd Division is picked to carry the major part of Operation Router.
We've been sent to the Isle of Wight for special training. We're training like hell day and night, getting into top condition, really good fighting shape. We're assured by our officers that we're not doing this just for fun.
July 2nd, the troops move out. They will be supplemented by a few British commandos and United States Rangers. In essence, though, this is a Canadian operation.
We don't know where we're going, but there's a wild buzz. A raid's to be made along the French coast. The secret is out. We are told that we are going to Dieppe. I think it's with a certain relief that we learn the plans. We have trained so long, we're almost overtrained.
German aircraft spot the concentration of shipping and attack. Operation Router is now canceled. A number of the Allied leaders are flatly against revival of the raid for security reasons. As thousands of troops know the plans, it is doubtful if secrecy can be maintained. Churchill favors going on. Mountbatten urges a revised raid on the condition that it can be remounted within a month. This suggestion is endorsed. The new plan, codenamed Operation Jubilee, is set for August 18th.
Everyone is confined to camp. We're ready to do whatever we're told. There's no panic, no fear. The Padre holds communion. Many of the boys attend. We just hope that in what lies ahead, we'll have a fighting chance.
August 17th, 273 ships put out to sea, bearing over 6,100 assault troops, tanks and field guns and small arms. The main landings will be at Dieppe. with flank landings at Puy and Bernval on the left, Pourville and Varangeville on the right. The 4 flank attacks are scheduled for 4:50 a.m. A half hour later, the major landings at Dieppe. 3:47 a.m. Only 7 miles off the French coast, a portion of the Allied convoy is discovered by German naval units. Elements of the Allied flotilla. Yet, unaware of the magnitude of the Canadian force, they report the encounter as a normal convoy incident. The Allied fleet continues on course. It is too late to turn back. 4:45 a.m. Within 7 minutes, 3 of the flank landings are made. The encountered opposition is light.
See the red, blue, and lilac-colored flares, the Leuchtturm. They've made a landing. It's hard to believe.
The Germans sound the alarm along the entire sector. .07 a.m. The 4th landing at Puy, to the left of Dieppe, is 15 minutes late. It is smashed on the beaches. 5:12 a.m. The Royal Navy opens fire on Dieppe. Hurricanes and Spitfires sweep in to cover the landings. .20 a.m. The first assault waves hit the beaches of Dieppe. They are met by murderous fire from the German snipers and machine gun emplacements. The initial bombardment has failed to subdue the enemy. The men are methodically slaughtered as enfilade fire sweeps across their defenseless positions. Within minutes, regiments are reduced to company size. 5:35 a.m. 30 tanks reach the bullet-infested beach. They become prime targets for the German artillery. The well-placed Germans are able to drench the invaders with deadly crossfire. At Dieppe, over 2,000 men are pinned down, unable to regroup or maneuver.
We have driven the armies back to the beaches. We are not an easy enemy. We are not cowards. But certainly they know that they will be defeated. They have no place to go but to the sea.
5:50 a.m. The Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders head for Pourville, the second assault to strike these beaches.
We begin to wonder about a great many things as the time draws near. But of one thing we are certain. For troops who have not been in action, we're as seasoned as troops can be. Speaking for my battalion, the Camerons, we are ready for anything. We have confidence in our officers. Most of us feel that things will come off all right, that we won't be doing anything that does not give us a good chance. There's very little fire cover, but a gunboat holds up close to us and lets go at the batteries hidden in the cliffs. Our landing craft drives right up onto the sand. We jump off into a foot of water. Other boats are right behind us. The objective is a farm further inland. From there, we're to proceed to an airfield and take it. We've run into heavy crossfire outside Pourville, but we push ahead toward our objective, the aerodrome of Saint-Aubin. There, we're to meet up with tanks coming from Dieppe.
In the air above the beaches, a significant battle is developing. 69 Allied squadrons sweep across the coast to intercept German aircraft, and also to pin down German reinforcements. Allied flyers make 3,000 sorties, forcing the Luftwaffe to put every available plane into the air. It is the greatest display of air power since the Battle of Britain. At Pourville to the right, the Canadians find there is no hope in obtaining their objectives. The tanks have failed to arrive from Dieppe. They begin to withdraw to the beaches.
The Germans are closing in. There's very heavy fighting. We throw up a rearguard action around the edge of the town. This may help more men to reach the beaches.
6:30 a.m. The force commanders are alarmed by the deteriorating situation. The vital headlands around Dieppe must be taken without delay. Reinforcements are rushed in. Dieppe, the attempts to break into town are met with superior forces. Gradually, the Canadians are forced back. Without tank support or adequate firepower, they are incapable of meeting the German resistance. 7 a.m. In a final attempt to gain the Dieppe headlands, the reserve forces are ordered in. A dense smoke screen is laid to cover the approach of the landing craft. Emerge into a world of total destruction. The beach is swept by concentrated enemy fire. Lifespan on the beaches is now a matter of seconds. The Allied position is hopeless. The landing craft are ordered to return to sea.
It seems like a very bad dream. We're trying to get out of here, and we can't. It's unbelievable that we should be stuck on a beach with no place to go.
The men are picked off as they run back to the landing crafts. It's a terrible, terrible thing. They do not have a chance.
The German fire is terrific. The boats are being shot right out of the water. Our losses are real heavy.
German fighters and bombers managed to break through the Allied air umbrella. The end comes swiftly now. The command orders full withdrawal for 11 a.m. Very few make it back to the ships. Shortly before 1 p.m., the Canadian command ship moves in near the beaches to see if further evacuation is possible. There are no signs of life. At 1:08 p.m., a message is received from the beaches. Our people here have surrendered.
I am wounded and barely conscious. It is very hard to accept the fact that it is all over. This is not the way things had been planned. There is one thing I remember as I'm taken prisoner. The lines a Cockney used to recite. And when the war is done and youth stone dead, I'll toddle safely home and die in bed.
At Dieppe, nearly 2,000 Canadians are taken prisoner, many of them seriously wounded. The ones who can walk are marched to the railroad station.
When I look at the beach, I feel sick to my stomach. Soldiers are lying about with half their bodies shot away, their limbs gone. As I look at them, all the heroism of war becomes nothing. The beach below has become a gruesome battlefield.
Operation Jubilee is over. In a moment, the conclusion of our story. The Dieppe raid lasted only 8 hours. Of the 6,100 men landed, 4,600 are either dead, wounded, or prisoners. The Canadians alone sacrificed 3,300 men from its 2nd Division. The German losses, 600 soldiers. Sergeant Renwick, wounded on the beaches and captured by the Germans, will later escape from a prisoner of war camp and return to England. Corporal Cassino later will fight at Monte Cassino, at Normandy, and in the Ardennes, where the Americans take him prisoner in 1944. On the military side, Dieppe is a stinging defeat for the Allies, a stunning victory for the Germans. But the raids caused the Germans to reinforce the West and tie up 45 divisions and 1,500 planes, all needed for the Russian campaigns. Through the lessons of the raid, the Allies developed new landing techniques, new equipment, and new respect for German firepower. In 1943, Jack Nickerson was a second lieutenant, a platoon leader in the 1st Armored Division in Tunisia, North Africa. Today, he is an assistant vice president of a bank in Oakland, California.
I had no preconceived picture of the enemy, no hate. Other than that, they were keeping us from doing what we wanted to do. I thought then that had 2 or 3 top Germans been eliminated, the war would have stopped. I realized later that this wouldn't have changed anything.
Arnold Steiner was a private in the 10th Panzer Division of Rommel's Panzer Army, Africa, in 1943. He lives today in Parsippany, New Jersey, where he works as a machinist.
Our captain told us you don't have to worry much about the Americans, because they are all gangsters, mostly ex-prisoners from Sing Sing. They all have crew cuts. We did not believe this, of course. But we did find out that most Americans had crew cuts.
During the bloody days of the North African campaign, the lives of Lieutenant Nickerson and Private Steiner came together for a brief moment. Now, one American, one German, relive that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. 1942. The Allies decide to invade French North Africa. The Allied objective, block Axis occupation of these French territories, seize Allied bases for operations against Italy and Germany from the south. Operation Torch is to be the first great amphibious landing of World War II. June 1942. The Western powers revive a project for the invasion of North Africa, designed to trap Rommel and provide North African bases. Operation Torch is hastily put into preparation. Lieutenant General Dwight D. Eisenhower will command the complex arrangements of air, sea, and land forces. Among the many thousands of Americans being trained for this invasion is a recent graduate of Officers Candidate School. Second Lieutenant Jack Nickerson, attached to the 3rd Infantry Division.
The training is rough. I know because I'm losing weight. In addition to all the regular infantry procedures, we're learning about amphibious landings, getting in and out of Higgins boats, and so forth. We have dry runs in Puget Sound. At this point, we'd all trade exercises for action, wherever it is. We'd just as soon get underway.
In Germany, new recruits are being trained as much-needed replacements for the Wehrmacht. One of these men, a young draftee in a camp in Poland, is Private Arnold Steiner.
The training is quite difficult, even for men in their 20s. We lift weights of 70 kilos, which is about 150 pounds. We are training to go to Russia as engineers. We have to do all sorts of things, like laying mines, operating anti-tank guns, and building bridges. One day the captain says to us, we need volunteers to go to Africa. But we only want soldiers with blood type O, and soldiers who can stand up to a climate like North Africa. I happen to have blood type O, so I sign up.
At the end of October, ships quietly slip out to sea from various ports in the United States and Great Britain. At the rendezvous are 350 warships and 500 transports. Their destination, the North African coast. The landings are set for November 8th to coincide with the 8th Army's offensive from El Alamein. The landings will be at Casablanca, Oran, and Algiers in French North Africa.
The first day out, we're told that we're going to invade North Africa. Our ship becomes a floating schoolhouse with classes in Arabic customs and the French political situation. Our primary task is to keep up the morale of the men and see that they remain in good physical condition. This is tough since the ships are crowded. We assign the men a minimum of duty and give them all the fresh air and freedom we can. There's an announcement over the loudspeaker system. We're told of the British victory at El Alamein, an explanation that the British have secured a tremendous victory. Naturally, the news boosts our morale.
D-Day, November 8th, 1942. The Great Fleet has reached its objective. The Allies do not know what to expect from the French. It is a question that only the landings can answer.
Push off. We head for Fadala, about 15 miles north of Casablanca. The guidebook calls it a small fishing port and a popular pleasure port. We'll see about that. Landings have gone well. The resistance hasn't been much, but we have been strafed by a few antique French planes, given, I might add, to the French by the Americans. At first, walking feels odd. The land seems to roll like the ship's deck. After 22 days of shipboard living, we've become rather soft.
Algiers surrenders on the first day, but not without pain, as 2 British destroyers are sunk in its harbor. At Oran, the resistance is stiffer. The American 1st Armored Division is decimated by French Marines, and 2 destroyers are lost. At Casablanca, the situation hangs in doubt for 3 days before the city capitulates on the 11th. Several French ships and 1,000 Frenchmen are lost. By means of delicate negotiations, Admiral Jean Darlan, an important and influential French official, agrees to an armistice on November 13th. The French North African territories are now placed under Allied jurisdiction.
We've entered the city. The French are waving and cheering and handing out bottles of wine. I think we're still a little skeptical, but we have no reason to doubt the sincerity of the greeting. We feel that the people are with us.
In retaliation, German troops suddenly invade Vichy, France. At the same time, German troops race to secure key military bases in Tunisia, moving ahead of the Americans. The Tunisian ports of Bizerta and Tunis, as well as several nearby airfields, form a defense line. Rommel builds up his strength for a decisive counterattack. Soon troop carriers are landing 1,000 men and more a day.
As soon as we land, British and American planes bomb the area. We take cover wherever we can, in the ditches, in doorways. It is our introduction to Africa and the war we have volunteered to fight. With the 10th Panzer Division. We don't have enough tanks yet. It is difficult to get them across from Italy. We can get men, but heavy equipment is another question.
For North Africa has now entered a new phase. Churchill says, "It is not the end, it is not the beginning of the end. It is perhaps the end of the beginning." The German reaction to the Anglo-American invasion is instantaneous. In December, the Germans repulsed the British First Army, already in sight of Tunis. Strong American forces and some French units move up to support the British First Army. Further Allied advances are hindered by the winter rains and mud.
The troop train going to Tunisia is a mess. It consists of a dinky engine and coaches resembling old streetcars. The men have to ride in the boxcars, and they still say the same thing on the side that they did in World War I, 40 and 8. I'm transferred to the 1st Armored Division as a replacement. I'm a little apprehensive about being an infantry officer in an armored division. The captain of the 2nd Battalion looks at me with my shining gold bars and says, "What am I supposed to do with you?" I answer, "That, Captain, is your problem."
As time is on the side of the Allies in the Battle of Supplies, Rommel attacks on February 14th.
Easy to spot things at a distance. A man, a camel, a truck, a tank. We have our 75mm anti-tank gun set up in such a way that any moving object on the road beneath us can be hit. By being patient, we are able to knock out 5 American tanks in 2 minutes. My impression of the American soldier is that they do not have enough training, enough experience, or maybe they are afraid like everybody else in the battle. They stay too close together and they don't take cover fast enough. The ideal army will be our soldiers with their equipment.
The Allies, caught by surprise, fight a series of delaying actions. Hill by hill, valley by valley, the Allies are driven back.
The division has been shipped out to new locations near Kasserine Pass this time. Our objective is to stop the German drive. There are tank battles going on all through the valley. The fighting is brutal. To my knowledge, this is the first time that the Germans have used their new Mark 6 Tiger tanks. We're still using Grants and Shermans. Needless to say, it's a very lopsided situation. The German Tiger completely outclasses us.
The green Americans at Kasserine Pass are wiped out in point-blank fighting. The Africa Corps continues the push, threatening to bisect the Allied armies. To plug the gap at Kasserine, 2 American divisions speed eastward from Oran. Thousands of trucks hauling supplies play a major role in the battle. The weather clears. 104 American aircraft are seen over Kasserine alone. By the end of February, Rommel retreats to his original position, the Battleline, a bristling system of fortifications built before the war by the French.
We are very short of drinking water. The American fighter planes have shut up our supply of water trucks. Sometimes we don't get supplies for 2 or 3 days.
While the torch forces move in from the northwest, the British 8th Army attacks the Battleline head-on and from the southern flank.
The British artillery are hitting our positions. They are hitting right on the button. And there are many casualties.
On On the 26th of March, resistance along the Mareth Line is broken. The Germans retreat to the Cape Bon Peninsula. On the 7th of April, the Americans link up with the British 8th Army. The trap is closing. The last great series of assaults begin across the Tunisian hills.
Naturally, we're often afraid, but I've every reason to believe that I'll survive this campaign. I don't plan on getting bumped off. My platoon has been given orders to assault Hill 315. The hill is supposed to be unoccupied. It's anything but. The Germans are well entrenched there. I see a lieutenant leading his men down a hill and I call out, "I'm sure glad to see you and your platoon." He answers, "Platoon, hell, this is what's left of my company. We've assaulted this damn hill 3 times and lost it. This is our 4th trip." The Germans have spotted us from camouflaged positions. One shell hits off to our right. Nobody is hurt. The second shell hit 6 of my men and myself.
The fighting rages all around. We have taken cover in a cave downhill from the enemy. We are surrounded. There is nothing to do but give up. We started with 75 men and now we have only 5 left. One of the American guards says to us in German, "You have nothing to worry about. Just relax and be calm." We are given cigarettes, soap, and plenty to eat. We have nothing to worry about, just like he said.
On May 7th, Tunis and Bizerta fall to the Allies. The German collapse is now complete. The trap is shut. In a moment, the conclusion of our story. On May 20th, 1943, a gigantic victory parade is held in Tunis. 2 soldiers are not there. Private Arnold Steiner has been sent to the United States as a prisoner of war. In 1946, he will make the long trip back to Berlin. Lieutenant Jack Nickerson spends many weeks in North African hospitals recovering from his wounds. Subsequently, he is sent to a rehabilitation center in England, where he remains until the war's end. Thus concludes Operation Torch. The green, raw Americans are now veterans and bloody.